G'day tubers, how are we people? Hope you're all well. Thank you to my subscribers, my viewers, and anyone else who contributes anything at all to these videos. What we're going to do here, as I mentioned in the last video, it's a little bit different. We're installing a diesel heater in my Rearfold Mars Extremo camper. The weather's going to start getting cold now in Australia, and I want to get up in the bush a little bit. So yeah, I thought I'm going to have a go at one of these heaters. Was a bit dubious at first. I've watched a lot of videos, and there seems to be a lot of different advice. So I haven't gone to great lengths because there's about a million videos out there. So I've just gone ahead and installed it my way. I am, without sort of spoiler alert, without giving up the end result, I am extremely happy with how it turned out. Yeah, let's go and have a look, guys. These are nowhere near as hard as what some people make them out to be. So yeah, let's hook in.
Well, tubers, here's our next little project. It's coming up to winter here in Australia, and I want to get away and doing a bit of camping, but of course it's going to be bloody cold. So this is the Mars Extremo Rearfold camper that we bought in February. We're going to fit one of these super duper Chinese diesel heaters to it. Bought this the other week. It was about 100, sorry about the sun there, about 160, 170 off eBay. That's Australian, of course. So come with everything, you know, all the bloody heater, all the bits and pieces. There's a tank over there under the bench. We're just going to, we're going to try and modify it. I've bought some brake pipe, just alloy brake pipe. It's the same size as the pickup, but what I want to do is, rather than use this flexible line that comes with the kit, and there's probably nothing wrong with it, I'd rather put a solid line in, just to lower the risk of any stones getting in it and splitting the line or anything like that. So I just bought a couple of metres of brake line, which I can bend, straighten, flare, all of that sort of stuff quite easily, and just put a few clips on it to hold it in, location. So I'm going to do that. So yeah, follow along. We'll see how we go. So I suppose the first step is to set him up and see where the heater's going to sit. Well, here's the inside of the camper set up, guys. Just got the bed propped up. Few locations for the heater under there. There's sort of plenty of room for it. Yeah, I'm thinking over in that corner, because there's sockets there, 12-volt sockets, so I might not have to run wiring lines. I can just put a socket on the end of the wiring, and it's fused and it's done, basically. I can mount it, well, I've got to make sure I can mount it there. I don't want to go drilling holes and all of that sort of stuff, because I don't know exactly what's underneath this. So we've got to establish that first before we do anything. And then there's got to be room to actually drill the holes, because there's a bit of stuff in the way. That could probably go forward a little bit, or even back, sort of in there, so I can drill it. I'm thinking around there somewhere, but once again, you've got to check that it doesn't interfere with anything. So we're going to take a few measurements and have a look underneath and see what we can work out. Don't know how well this is going to come out, guys. I'm underneath, that's the water tank. There's a nice clear area right here. It's getting a bit tight over this way. There's some electrics there, a bit of cabling, but there's nothing in that area. So what I'm thinking, I'll do a few measurements and see where that comes out inside. So I suppose if we start, we're just about in line with the back of the guard, so that'll be the same inside. So if we go in, I'll do a measurement from the outside into there, and we'll see how far that is, and we'll have a look inside. At a rough measurement, guys, that's roughly where the unit would sit, but that's I'd much rather it was tucked in a bit more if possible. Yeah, we might just do a little bit more looking before we go start cutting anything. I'd prefer that to be in that way a bit more. That way it just opens up that area a little bit more for storage. I mean, I've got some deck chairs and shit to get in there. Yeah, we might just do a little bit more exploring before we go cutting anything here. Well, guys, that's where she's going to have to sit. Down under there's just all the substructure, all of that sort of thing. That's the only clear spot. Any further forward's probably getting too hard. I'll lose a little bit of room there, but not too much. I think I can bear it. Yeah, that'll have to do. Well, X marks the spot, guys. That's where she's going. I drilled a couple of pilot holes up through. You can just make out a bit of light from outside. Up through the bottom, laid on the template, marked all the rest of it. And if you measure across from that one to that one to that one, that'll give you a centre. I'm going to drill a 100mm hole through there with a circle saw, or hole saw rather. And yeah, that's where she's going to sit. It's as good as I could get it. I didn't want it. I wanted it right in that way. It's as close as I can get because there is structural members under there that, you know, it's just going to be a nightmare without it. Well, that's that section cut out, guys. Yeah, that's down to the metal. Plate fits in there nicely. So that's all right. Yeah, I didn't want to put anything on top of that. Just in case it gets a bit hot from the exhaust. I didn't want it to start smoking or melting or anything. So there's our centre hole. We should be right to open up a 100mm hole. Well, 100mm hole saw, guys. We'll put that through, see how we go. 100mm hole, guys. What you're going to have sharp edges here, so this has got to be filed clean and you know, neatened up. And we'll put some paint around that exposed, you know, where it's sort of fresh metal. That'll help stop it from rusting. Well, I hope I'm doing this right, tubers. That's the bottom of our unit, obviously. That's the plate that we cut the hole with, the template, if you like. That goes there. And then I imagine there's 4 nuts that'll hold that down, and the main mounting is through those 4 screws. So if that's all there is to it, that's pretty easy. It comes with instructions. Yeah, look, they're of some value. Can be a little bit hard to follow only because it's been interpreted from Chinese to English, and that can always be a little bit dodgy. As in, the voltage would be better if 11.5, 12.8. Need I say more? But yeah, anyway, so that's all right. I've watched about 500,000 videos on these. There is a gasket under that too, that rubber gasket. We'll bolt that down. We'll then put some, I bought some heat-proof silicone. Yeah, high temp gasket maker silicone. So hopefully that'll seal up around. I wanted to use high temp because it has got an exhaust. Yeah, we'll screw it together and see what happens. Well, we're about to put the heater in, guys. Cleaned up all the edge, like I said. I've just put some silicone around, screwed our plate on. Just put a little rubber grommet in there just to seal that hole. I don't know what it's for. I think it might be just for cabling to come through, but we've got our 4 screws. We've drilled some pilot holes. Let's put it in. Well, that's where we come out underneath, guys. Yeah, that's our intake. That's our exhaust. So exhaust is going to run somewhere over here, I'd imagine. And intake's going to be just somewhere up around here, I'd say. Probably pointing backwards so water doesn't get in it. Silicone worked. Yeah, that's it. Well, we'll start on the air cleaner, guys. External, obviously. Flexible hose, put a clamp on it. And it looks like they supply these to clamp the hose. There's no real clamp for that. So we're going to put that on, like so, and see how much. I'm trying to do this one-handed. It looks to me when that clamps down that that's going to crush that pipe. We'll just see. We'll just do a bit of bending and that and see what happens. Well, that's the exhaust on, guys. Just a little bracket. Yeah, so on and so on to the muffler. There's a little hole there. Make sure that's pointing downwards. There will be condensation. I've tried to keep it away from the rubber. It's not sticking out too far. I can move it in if I have to. Just with the clamp on up there. I'm starting to run the air cleaner, air intake, but the clamps they've given me, all they do is crush the pipe, so I'm going to have to get some other sort of clamps and, yeah, do something better with that, but, yeah, it's easy enough. Well, that's the air cleaner done, guys. I put some rubber line P-clips there. The ones supplied were too small and they were crushing the pipe, so I went down to Industrial Supplies and got some of them, and yeah, that worked out all right. We'll do a bit of work inside now. I've still got to plumb all the fuel line and all of that, of course, but and mount the tank. But yeah, I'll do a bit inside. Now, remember I said the steel template under the heater had a slot in it and I wasn't sure what for. Well, that's what that wire goes. That goes to the fuel pump, and I'm sure that that slot's for that wire to go through, because the rest of it's all internal. Now, of course, I've put all that in and elasticed it, so I'll rerun the wire. What I'll do is I'll just cut the two wires, poke all this through a grommet in the floor, and then reattach the wires with some heat shrink and all of that, and you'll never know. But yeah, so that's what that little slot was for, I'd imagine. The rest is pretty straightforward, an earth and a 12-volt supply. Guys, I'll start by mounting the little control unit or control box. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It just comes with that bracket that it clips into. I'm going to use a couple of pop rivets just to hold it in place. There's only tiny little holes, as you can see. So yeah, I'm going to pop rivet that in up under there. I'll just sit it up in there somewhere. There we go, that's better. Just up in there. Now, I know it's a bit out of the way, but it's got a remote control. How often do you really need to look at that? So yeah, we'll sit it up in there and it's out of the way. The other thing, of course, you've got to watch is nothing fouls when the bed comes down. So you've got to check all that shit as well. Well, that's it, guys. That's up and out of the way. As I say, you don't need to see that all the time, and it's tucked out of harm's way up there, so that'll be good. And as I say, it comes with a remote, so you should be able to do everything from that, I'd imagine. Starting to fall into place, guys. Connected the main plug, I guess you'd call it, from the unit. Just tidied that up behind there and put a clamp on it. Those two wires have got to run to the front. That's your power and your pump. The earth, I've got to crawl under here. The earth is right there, just with one of those self-tapping screws. I hope that'll scratch the paint enough to give a good earth. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, really, the wiring. It's all plugged and that, so really it's just a case of making it neat and getting it out of the way. I'll see if I've got some split loom to run that in, and that'll tidy that up and it'll match what the factory stuff is, and hopefully you'll never know. Just looking for options to run these wires, guys, the power and the fuel pump. Those 3 or 4 wires in the split loom going through that firewall, or not a firewall, that panel, go into where the switch panel is. I can run a couple of cables through that and straight into the back of the switchboard, which I'm hoping has a powered, which I think's got a spare powered switch in there, as it fitted as, not as an option, but I mean if you wanted to ever put anything else in there. So we'll go and have a look at that and see if it powers up. Well, here's the outside switch panel, guys, and I'm going to try for that one there because it's not labelled with anything. I think it's a spare. So, and that's fused as well by that. So I've already undone this, so let me try and take it out without exploding anything. And there we have what's behind it. Now, we'll sit that down there out of the way. Now that's where those cables come through. You can just make that out in there. I can run that power wire down, and I'm hoping to pick up this switch. So what we're going to do now, we'll test it with our test light and see if it actually powers up. Well, that should work out all right, guys. Got an earth, got my test light on. If you flick that switch, oh, hang on. What have I done? Oh, there we go. Sorry, yep. Flick that switch and we've got fused power there. So that's all right, we can utilise that switch and make it an even nicer installation. Just looking at our diesel tank, guys. Down the bottom there's a flat bit there. There's no real seam. There's a little bit of a seam. I presume that's where the pickup goes in. Now, they supply this with the kit, but they reckon that's only for metal tanks, you know, like say if you wanted to patch it into a truck tank or your car diesel tank or something like that. So we won't be using that. What they give you is that little fuel pickup, 3 screws and 3 washers, which will be to mount the tank. That nut and 2 O-rings. So an O-ring will be one inside, one outside. So the dilemma is, how do you, well, it's easy enough to drill a hole in that. How do you get that in there to that? You can't use a magnet because it's an alloy. So I watched a video of a guy and he did it with a bit of wire. So, and he put the wire through that, and that slid down the wire and into the hole. So we're going to try that. That little pickup pipe we need to drill a hole for. And if you'll be able to make that out, she comes in at about 7.9 millimetres. So if we drill an 8mm hole, we should be all right. Right, so here's the theory, guys. We've drilled our hole in the bottom of the tank. We're going to pass this wire up through the bottom, come out the top, then we're going to get our little fuel pickup and put that over the wire at the top, and then that gravity should just slide that down and hopefully pop out the bottom, and we can pull it through with a bit of pliers, put the nut and the O-ring on. Of course, remember to have one O-ring on the inside, one O-ring on the outside, guys. And there we have it, guys. That couldn't have been easier, actually. It worked a treat. Just when you go to tighten it by that nut, the whole thing started turning. Just grab that pipe loosely with your pliers, just enough to hold it, and then you can nip it up tight, and that's fine. I blew some air through it and it seems to be airtight, so it should be fuel tight with a bit of luck. Looking at the front of the camper, we're going to put the tank right in that area there. To get in there to drill it and all that, I've got to take this off. That's pretty straightforward. It's only 2 bolts. That one, the other one I haven't taken off yet, so just so we can get in there. Well, that's the tank on, guys. Pretty straightforward to mount. It's just 3 self-drilling, self-tapping screws. Yeah, so that's all right. You can just make out the pickup there underneath. It looks a bit exposed, and I thought about that. By the time I put all that guard back on and all that, it should be all right. So the only bit of exposed line is going to be from there to underneath the other side of that chassis rail, so that shouldn't be a huge problem. All right, guys, we've run, that's our power wire, the red, and the black is the 2 wires for the fuel pump. Put it in some split loom, ran that right up on the inside there, right up to, I hope you can see it, that grommet there, and that little tail is the fuel pump. I'm going to drill a hole through the floor there with a rubber grommet, and the pump's going to go outside there somewhere, and probably as close to the tank as I can get it, I imagine. And as I mentioned, guys, there's our 2 wires there. There's our main power wire, and that's the double for the fuel pump, which is going to come up through, probably up into there somewhere and out the floor with a rubber grommet, of course. We'll solder up, we'll put our fuse back on the end of that, which is what came with the kit. So it'll be, in effect, it'll be double fused, but that's all right. And then we'll put a spade terminal on that end and clip it into that one there. Soldering connections, guys. There's 2 trains of thought on this, and I don't know which one's right and which one's wrong. I've heard so many people say solder all your connections, you know, any terminals, that sort of thing. You get a much better connection, electricity flow, so on and so on and so on. And yet I was talking to a pilot that runs a radio shop. This is in Cobar in New South Wales, out in the middle of New South Wales there. And he's a radio technician and a renowned pilot. And he says he would not go up in a plane that has soldered connections in it. So you tell me. I mean, I solder them, but I don't know what's right and what's wrong. But yeah, I guess it depends on the application. Well, that's our wire ran for the power, guys. The earth is inside, as you know. There's the standard fuse that comes with the kit. And that's also a fuse there, power coming out of that into the switch. So it's double fused in effect. Yeah, and just sort of, I don't know, tidy up your wiring and yeah, just make it look neat, and that's that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our pump wire, which is that one there, if you can just see that. We're going to strip that back a bit and join 2 new wires to it, and we're going to run it through the floor and then right up to the front here somewhere. Because as I say, I want the pump up the front if possible. That's the plug off the fuel pump, guys. Red wire, green wire. Unfortunately, I don't have any red wire, so I'll just use a combination of green and brown. The green will go to the green, obviously, and the red will go to the brown. So, best I can do with what I've got. Well, that's our 2 wires for the fuel pump, guys. Double heat shrinked, soldered and all of that, so that shouldn't go anywhere. And we'll cover these wires in some split loom. That's about 10mm. I've got some 7mm, which will work out real nice for that. Just a matter of now drilling a hole up the front here somewhere, poking that wire through, and then spraying the bare metal so it doesn't rust, and of course put a rubber grommet in it as well. Do not put wires through steel or anything like that without rubber grommets. You're just asking for pain. Well, that's the power wire for the pump ran, guys. Leave a bit of slack, obviously. We drilled our hole, put a rubber grommet in it, painted the bare metal. Now we're just going to put some Silastic around it just to seal it, because it is on the other side exposed to the weather. And then put some plastic ties on it, make it nice, and yeah, we'll just leave the rest out here for the time being. We won't cut anything yet because we don't know where the pump's going to end up. Well, guys, we tried our first power up and nothing happened. So I quickly traced it, and of course no earth. Now that's our earth point there. Sorry, it went out of focus. I would have thought, yep, it's earth straight to the chassis, no problem. Turns out the factory wiring doesn't earth to the chassis. I tried everywhere and could not pick up an earth. So what I've done, rightly or wrongly, I went to the battery. I've a bit hard to see, hang on, I'll get some light. Yeah, sorry guys. Hooked up a second earth wire and connected it to the chassis. There you can just make out the yellow terminal up under there. And lo and behold, everything's working. So if we climb back out here and go to our unit, it powered up. So yeah, it was just an earth problem, which is fine. The only reason I'm wondering is why didn't the factory put an earth directly to the chassis? There may be a reason for it. I'm not an auto electrician. I know a little bit about it as a mechanic, but I don't know if it has any bad effect, but I've ran an earth directly to the chassis and yeah, the unit came on and we'll see what happens. So it powered up anyway. We still haven't done the pump. That's basically next. Well guys, we're going to start on this fuel line and fuel pump. Rightly or wrongly, I'm going to use solid line. This is just brake pipe line. We've got to make sure it's spotlessly clean inside and all of that, of course, as you would a normal, the normal fuel line over there, which they recommend don't YouTube videos recommend don't use. If ever you've done any plumbing on cars, you know, brake pipes, fuel lines, that sort of thing, and you get this can be a real bugger to straighten and get to. Well, it's easy to straighten, but to get it nice and straight, like a piece like that, these tools are the best bloody things ever. And what you do is you put I'll put a slight bend in that, just so you can see. There you go, there's a slight bend in it, nothing too serious. And what we do is you put that in there like so, just put a bit of tension on that roller, and then you roll that back and forwards and sort of twist it, like so. And lo and behold, she comes out nice and straight. Look at that. So we're going to roll that big piece now out into a straight piece, makes it much easier to work with and figure out where your bends are. But if you're doing a lot of plumbing on cars, get one of these things, they're fantastic. There guys, you've got to be happy with that. I mean look, there's a slight little bow in it, but basically she's nice and straight and easy to work with. Don't do these too tight. Just sort of nip the pipe and just roll it back and forwards like that. And yeah, it works an absolute treat. And, you know, it looks like you could probably do up to, I don't know, probably about a bit of half-inch pipe or something, or, you know, 12, 13 mil pipe or something. I don't think it'd be any good for steel bar, but for tube or pipe like that, fantastic. Couple of tools for working with pipe, guys. Little pipe cutter. This is only a bloody little Chinese thing, but believe it or not, it does the job. And you get a nice, neat cut. If you use pliers, you're just going to crush the pipe and just ruin it. And a hacksaw will cut it, but it just makes it rough as guts, and you've got to clean it all up. And as I say, being brakes or anything like that, you don't want any metal getting in there. It's going to go straight through and just destroy your brakes, your seals in your brakes. And a little pipe bender like that, and it makes beautiful bends. And because if you try to do it by hand, you'll never get an even sort of bend in it. With this brake pipe, guys, in this application, as you can see, that end it's just been cut, but I haven't done anything with it. That end, I've just started the first stage of a double flare. Now, the reason for that is, and you don't have to do this, but it's just me. When you push the plastic pipe over that, and then put the clamp on this side of that sort of bulge, that'll make it very, very hard to pull that pipe out. Because the clamp's actually got to get over that bulge, and it just provides a bit better, bit better seal and security and what have you. I don't know how successful this piping's going to be. There's a guy on YouTube who, John Mack, I think he calls himself, and he has done a whole series of videos on these things, these heaters. Very detailed, very knowledgeable man, well worth watching the videos. He didn't, well, the video I saw, he didn't mention using solid pipe, but he said that it may tend to cause like a water hammer effect. Now, everyone knows these stupid looking pumps are supposed to be quite noisy, and I'm going to try and not solid mount the pump. I'm just hoping I don't run into that issue using solid pipe. It's going to be clamped and in rubber P-clips, rubber lined P-clip clamps. We'll just see how we go, but I'll tell you what, have a look at those videos at John Mack or MCK, I think it is. And yeah, there's a heap of videos on these heaters, and it's very, very detailed information. Well worth a look. Well, this is what we've come up with so far, guys. Out of the tank, into the steel pipe, alloy pipe, whatever it is, underneath, and we go along. A couple of clamps to our filter. We'll come out of the filter and start heading down that way where we're going to put the pump. Well, we're just about up to the pump, guys. Mentions, well, everyone says don't mount them level like that. They've got to be, I think, a minimum of about 15 degrees or 20 degrees, anything up to like 90. I'm just going to try for around 45. I don't want to solid mount it. It comes with this clamp, which you know, goes around the outside of it like so. That's really soft rubber there, but by the time you stretch that on, and that is solid rubber up there, the whole thing goes quite rigid, and I'm tipping that's what helps promote the noise. I don't know, and a lot of people have done a lot more study on this than what I have. But I saw one guy mounted one of these, and it was just held roughly in place by some plastic ties in that. Well, and that's fine. I don't know what I'm going to do, but what I am going to do is I'm going to mount this in proper automotive grade fuel line with some really good clamps, and I'm hoping that the rigidity in this is enough to, and the angle and so on, and the solid pipe I'm going to use will hold it in place and be more than solid enough to actually support it. That way it's totally independent of the chassis, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but that's what we're going to try for. Well, tubers, this isn't the best. I'm laying on my back trying to do this. There's the pump in. It's sort of loose, as you can see. Maybe prone to vibration. I've got that solid line, well, I've got a bit of a cold, or the COVID, strapped quite well, but I'm hoping that will absorb any knocks or anything that come out of that pump, you know, that ticking noise that everyone complains about. Basically, the install's done. I've left that loose because I want to just drop that line off and just see if it primes up all right. And if it does, then I'll put it back and tighten it up. I hope that's all right. It doesn't interfere with anything. It doesn't touch anything. We'll see what happens. And there's the solid line going to the tank, the unit, guys. That's the end of it. Just normal brake pipe, but it's, you know, I've got it strapped up well in there. Yeah, just I don't know if it's going to work or not, but yeah, that's I wanted as much solid line as possible. I just reckon it's a bit stronger, a bit better, but then again, it may transmit noise. I guess we're going to find out. Well, tubers, we're just warming up now. She's a goer. One or two little leaks underneath when I primed the pump, but yeah, it's coming along now. You can probably hear the fan. It's going quite strong. A little bit of a tick from the pump. I'm just going to work out how to slow this down now and turn it down, because that is just so much heat. It's heaps. Just turned that down to its lowest setting, guys, which was about that 1.4 hertz, I think it is. I don't know how to switch the bloody thing over to Celsius. It's telling me the ambient temperature in here, well, at that unit, it's 23. This is just idling away now, just real slow, and it's warm. It's above warm. It's sort of hot, but not hot. Pumps you can hear just ticking away. Now it's the middle of the day, and you wouldn't even hear it if you're having a few beers with the boys. Now in the middle of the night, yes, I'm tipping you'd hear it. But I think what the go might be is, I'm sure there's all sorts of theories about how to quieten these pumps. Set it, and have it go until you're ready to go to sleep, and then turn it off, and then set it to come on, 3 or 4 hours later when you're asleep, and you might not even hear it kick off, and it'll warm you up in the middle of the night. But for the 160, 170 bucks I paid for it and a few hours installation, and I got pretty fussy with the installation, you could do it a lot quicker. I reckon it's well worth every penny, but we'll try it out when we get up in the bush.
Have fun, guys. See you next video.